Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Amrita Ramesh, and I am here with yet another video on control and coordination. And in this video lecture, we'll be discussing about reflex action. So this is the continuation of the previous video. So last video, we discussed about the structure of a neuron. So this video will be dealing with reflex action. And this video series is in English. There's another set of video series in Tamil. So you can forward it to your friends and relatives who would like to have an explanation in Tamil so that they can get benefited. So let's move on to the topic. So this is a small background. Now let's move to the topic. So first we will discuss what is a reflex. In reflex action, what exactly do we mean by the word reflex? What exactly is a reflex? Reflex is something that we do very spontaneously, extremely spontaneously. There is no thought process that is involved in case of a reflex. There's no thinking that is happening. So in that split second of a time, we just quickly react to that situation. So that is what is a reflex without consciously thinking or making a decision and then reacting. There is no analysis going on. So when I say there is no analysis going on, what do I mean? I mean that the brain is not involved. Okay. So first we should know what is the function of the brain. Okay. What is the function of the brain? Brain has different parts. Okay. And most importantly, in the forebrain, all the logical reasoning, all the thinking, all the emotions, all the analytics, all that will be the functions. Those are the functions of the brain. So that is what the brain does. Okay. So when we do all of this and then take a decision, there is a little bit of time gap that is there. But in case of reflex, what happens? We do not give this time gap. There is no time gap or lapse that is involved. There is a quick reaction that happens without consciously making an effort. We don't even know what we are doing, but we just end up doing it quickly. So that is exactly what is a reflex. So now let's move on and see what are the different types of reflexes. Now there is a simple or basic reflex and there's an acquired or conditioned reflex. Let's quickly understand what each of this means. Now simple or basic reflex is something that's inbuilt and that does not require a learning. Now example, let us see if you're touching a object, a hot object, or if you're putting your hand on a thorn. Okay, you by mistake you happen to touch a thorn. So what happens at that time? Do you really think, okay, am I touching a thorn? What am I supposed to do? What is this? We don't analyze. We quickly pull our hand back. Similarly, if we hit any object, we quickly pull our leg back. So this is what is a simple or basic reflex. It does not require practice. We really go and practice every day what we that we should touch this hot object and then we should immediately remove it back. We don't do that. There is no learning happening. So those kind of reflexes are called as simple or basic reflex. Now, what is acquired or conditioned reflex? So acquired or conditioned reflex occurs over a period of time. There is a little bit of time involved there. It involves learning, it involves practice. All this is involved in case of acquired or conditioned reflex. That process. Now, let's take an example to understand this. Now, if you've seen people, your father or anyone else typing really fast, so it's not that they have been doing it for a long time, is it? By birth, do they have it? Immediately after birth, are we able to type it that fast? No. We learn it. We practice it. How do we practice it? By going to a class or by learning typewriting or by doing the typing job over a period of time. Time and again, we keep on doing it again and again. And that is how we try to become good at it. Similarly, another example, if you take, supposing you are learning an instrument, be it keyboard or be it violin or any other instrument, musical instrument. What happens over a period of time? Even with closed eyes, you will be able to go to the right key. So that is what is called as an acquired or conditioned reflex, which happens over a period of time. Now, let's see the process. Now let's come to the process and see what exactly is happening in a reflex action. So when we are doing this whole job, okay, quickly pulling our hand back or going and hitting the right notes on a piano or a keyboard, how is it that we are able to do it? What is there in the brain, or what is directing the brain or spinal cord to do it? Let's quickly have a look at the process that goes behind this. Okay. Now, before we go into the process, let's get familiar with the terms. What are the terms? There are a couple of terms that are involved here, which we have to be very clear. Now, when we learned about neurons, we know that neurons can be classified into many types. So one of the type that we learned was myelinated neuron and unmyelinated neuron. And what was that? Based on the myelin sheath that is present outside the neuron, the covering, the wrapping, right? That is when we say it's myelinated or unmyelinated. Similarly, another classification is present of the neuron based on the function that they perform. It's the function, okay, based on the function. Now let's see what is that classification. There are three types of neurons based on the function that they perform. What is that function? One is a sensory neuron, another one is a motor neuron, and the third one is a interneuron or relay neuron. Okay, so what is a sensory neuron? Sensory neuron is that neuron which takes this nerve impulse or signal from the sense organ to the brain. Okay, that is what that particular neuron which takes the impulse or the signal from the sense organ to the brain. That neuron is called as the sensory neuron. Okay. Now, what are the sense organs? We know we have five different types of sense organs. Supposing you take the example of your hand or your skin. Now, skin has different receptors. It has pain receptors. It has thermal receptors for heat, pain receptors so that it can detect the pain. Okay. Similarly, on the tongue, we have something called a gustatory receptor, okay, which can detect the taste. Similarly, in the nose, we have olfactory receptors, which can detect the smell. And then it takes us to the brain. The signal goes to the brain. So, those neurons which are associated with this are called as sensory neuron. Okay. Now, what does it do? It conveys or carries the impulse from the receptor organ to the CNS. CNS comprises of what? From the previous video, we know that CNS comprises of the brain and the spinal cord, both together. Okay. Now, what are motor neurons or motor nerve? Motor neuron or motor nerve just does the opposite function. It has an opposite function to the sensory neuron. What is it? It will carry back the information from the brain to the sense organ. Back, okay? It will come back. And where will it come back from? The brain or the spinal cord. So basically, the motor nerve now carries the impulse from the CNS and transmits it to the effector organ or motor organ. So you have to remember very carefully, whenever you have sensory neuron, it's to the brain. So S with T, to the brain. And motor, F, M, F. Okay, remember S, T, and M is F. So motor nerve or motor neuron from the brain to the sense organ, and sensory neuron from the sense organ to the brain. So it's to the brain, and this is from the brain. This is how you have to remember it very nicely and easily. Okay. Next, what is a relay neuron then? Relay neuron has another name which we call it as interneuron. Now, the word inter means what? Something in between. Okay, in between is inter. Now, what is in between? This neuron lies in between. In between of what? But in between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. Okay, sensory nerve and the motor nerve. In between them, you have this relay nerve or relay neuron. What does it do? First, it will take the message from the sensory neuron and convey it to the motor neuron. Similarly, from the motor neuron, it will convey it to the sensory neuron. So, it acts as a connection between the two neurons. Okay. Now, we'll see how it does it in the next slide. Next couple of slides, we'll see how this relay neuron works. Now, there is let's go into a little bit into the detail. Now, here if you see, reflex action we know is the quick action that we do. Okay, now when we are touching a hot object, the immediate removal of our hand is the reflex. That's the action which we show. But what is a reflex arc? Okay, reflex action is a different term. Reflex arc is a different term. What is a reflex arc? The neural pathway involved in accomplishing the reflex action. Okay, there is a pathway that is involved in doing what? In completing the reflex action. Okay, so reflex action starts with something, right? So reflex action, why do we do the reflex action? Because we are subjected to a particular stimulus. Stimulus could be pain, it could be heat, it could be anything, right? Because we are subjected to do that, we do this reflex action, we show that reflex action, isn't it? So there is a pathway that is involved. Okay, there is a continuous pathway that is involved. That pathway is a neural pathway. Why? Because the brain is involved, the spinal cord is involved. Since all these are involved, we call it a neural pathway and nothing else. So, the neural pathway involved in accomplishing the reflex action, in doing the reflex action, is called the reflex arc. Okay, now let's see what exactly is happening here. First, the skin detects the prick from the thorn. Okay, so here is a plant which has thorns on it. Now our hand by mistake touches it. So that is the stimulus here, isn't it? So we have sensory receptors. I told you on the skin we have pain receptor, we have heat receptors, that is thermal receptors. So pain receptors, as soon as we touch something sharp, okay, it could be a needle, it could be a thorn, it immediately detects that pain. Our skin is able to detect that pain. Now what will it do? It will detect that pain and send a signal. Via what? Through what? Through the sensory neuron. Okay, so here is the sensory neuron. Via this red color is the sensory neuron. Via the sensory neuron, the message that we have been pricked by a thorn is sent via the sensory neuron. To which part? To the spinal cord. First, the spinal cord is involved. Only later the brain is involved. Okay, we'll see the reason why. So this message goes to the spinal cord. Now, it has to be transferred to the motor neuron. Okay, so what happens? This message, okay, is transferred to the relay neuron, that is the interneuron, and the message is then carried back via the motor neuron. To which part? To the hand, the muscles in the hand. To do what? To quickly remove our hand, to pull our hand back so that we don't get hurt. So this whole thing from here, starting from receiving the pain to sensing the pain, then via the sensory neuron, we send the message to the spinal cord. From the spinal cord, via the relay neuron or interneuron, the message is sent to the motor neuron to take the hand back, pull the hand back. So this whole process called as a reflex arc. So the neural pathway that is involved in accomplishing the new reflex action called the reflex arc. So the first step is the skin detects the prick from the plant thorn. So electrical impulses then pass along a sensory neuron. Okay, impulse arrives at the relay neuron. So then it will arrive at the relay neuron in the central nervous system, brain and the spinal cord. So in this case, first it goes to the spinal cord. Later it will go to the brain. Impulse is passed to the motor neuron. From there, it is passed to the effector. Effector is nothing but the organ which is involved. In this case, it is the hand. So, muscles of the hand or hand. If it's the leg, it will be the leg. Whichever part is involved, that is called the effector organ. Whichever part is involved. Muscle contracts and pulls the hand away. So, this is what exactly the reflex arc whole process. And reflex action is the action of us pulling the hand back. That action, no quick action, that is what is reflex action. Now, now you can see this GIF where you will clearly see what exactly is happening. So when this hot object is being touched, so this hand touches this hot object, it's going to the sensory neuron and then relay neuron. This is the relay neuron. So message is being passed to the relay neuron. From the relay neuron, it will come back via the motor neuron. To which part? To the effector organ, that is the muscle. And the hand will be pulled back. If you see now, the hand is being pulled back. So this is what is the reflex action, reflex arc. Okay. See, here it goes, comes back here, and the hand is pulled. So this is what is reflex arc or reflex action. You can see it once again. It will go here via the sensory neuron, transmit to the relay neuron. Message is transmitted by a neurotransmitter to the relay neuron, again through a synapse. We studied about the synapse in the previous lecture. Then it is brought back via the motor neuron to the effector organ, that is the hand in this, so that we pull it back. This is the reflex action. I hope this is clear. The concept of reflex action and reflex arc is clear. Let's move ahead to the next point. Some very important things to note with respect to a reflex action or reflex arc is that the first message is sent to the spinal cord and later the message goes to the brain. Now, why does this happen? Because as I told you in the beginning itself, the brain is involved in analyzing, it is involved in thinking, it is involved in emotions. Okay, when we feel like crying, when we feel like laughing, okay, anxiety, all these is dealt with by the brain. Okay, now, or when we solve maths, when we study something, okay, all that thinking, analyzing, logical, okay, reasoning, all that is done by the brain. Now here I told you reflex action happens very, very quickly. There is very less time that is involved. It has to be very quick. Okay, so since it happens extremely quickly, there is not enough time, okay, for processing, for thinking and all that. So the spinal cord is the one that actually first takes care in sending the message quickly back to the organ, whichever is involved. So that is why spinal cord is first involved. But later on, the message is sent to the brain. Now, when the action itself is completed, why should the brain be involved? Isn't it? It's a very valid question. Now, when I've already pulled my hand back, now why the brain should be involved in it? Right? It's of no use. When the spinal cord has done its job, why should the brain bother? No, but that is not the case. Supposing if this time you touch a hot object, will you do that again? Will we go and purposefully touch a hot object? Do we do that ever? No. Why don't we do it? Because we have something called memory. The brain stores memory. Brain also deals with memory. The way it deals with logical reasoning and analytical thinking, all that, the brain also deals with memory. Okay, so memory is a very important thing, very, very extremely important thing. So once we do something, the brain stores it as a memory. Okay, so next time when we are near a very hot object, when we are near a thorn, okay, when we are near a rose plant, okay, we are more careful, right? The first time maybe we didn't know, so we by mistake went and touched it. But the next time when you see the same thing again, same plant, you go and will you go and touch it? Because we know that there is some danger. How do we know that there is some danger? Because our brain remembers last time when I touched it, something happened. This time I'm not supposed to do the same thing. So this time I'll be more careful. So that is the work of the brain. So later the message is sent to the brain because the brain will understand, think, why this happened, what is wrong with the situation, what I should be careful of next time. All this analysis is done by the brain, the later stage. So first the response has to be quickly take it off, then the response is to think, analyze, okay, all that. So then that is why at a later point the brain is involved. The first time it is only the spinal cord that is involved. So, in case of a reflex arc, the message is first sent to the spinal cord. Later, the message is sent to the brain. When the impulse reaches the brain, the information can be stored as memory, and the person can start thinking about the situation, how it happened, what to do about it, and so on. Okay. So, this is what is very important with respect to reflex action or reflex arc. So, you have to remember that it's the spinal cord that is involved and not the brain. Initially, not the brain. Later, the message is sent to the brain. So, I also wanted to tell you about this knee jerk reflex. Okay, this is called as deep tendon knee jerk reflex. Now, this is what is reflex. Immediately, there will be within no time the leg moves. This is a reflex. This is exactly what is a reflex. Now, how does it happen? On the surface of the knee, there is one particular region. When you hit at that particular region, our knee will start flexing. Okay, immediately it will start flexing. Now, why does it happen? Because it's a that point. Okay, that particular point causes that reflex because there is a when you hit it, there's some kind of a pain. Quick, so that is when our knee will start twitching or flexing. Okay, so this is what is a reflex. A perfect example for a reflex. You can see the time. See the The minimal time, okay, hardly some nanoseconds or something is involved in this flexing, okay. This is what is called as a reflex action. The amount of time, it's very, very less. So this is what is a reflex. That particular spot, when you hit it, it will immediately start flexing. You see, they hold that spot. That is what is very key in this. Very interesting. You can try it at home as well. But do remember not to hit it too hard so that you damage of the knee. Okay? Do not try to do something like that. So I hope you liked this video and enjoyed learning. Kindly share and subscribe. Also, since this video is available in Tamil, you can share it to many more your friends and relatives. Secondly, if you have any suggestions, feedback, queries, or doubts, drop a message in the comment section below. Thank you so much.